Welcome to the Peaceful Podcast, your home for honest discussion about war, peace, and freedom of conscience. Here are your hosts, Justin and Jessica Pavoni.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network on the Seeds of Liberty podcast and also theconsciousresistance.com. So today we have Jessica Pavoni, who is an anarchist, former Air Force pilot turned conscientious objector, now is the infamous Anarcho Mama, founder and blogger at libertybug.org. You can find her on Facebook under Libertybug and also Twitter. The name is Libertybug, but it's at Anarcho Mama. So just to confuse you. So we'll discuss, her history in the military, which coincides also with how she became an anarchist, and then how she became a conscientious objector, and her blog series, Are You Really Free? And also she's a mother of two, so I never overlook the opportunity to talk about peaceful parenting with anyone, so hopefully we'll get into that. So Jessica, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor. Yeah,
I saw you on the, or you and your husband, I heard you on the Tom Woods show, and I thought this was a great story. It's so awesome to hear people, not only how they became anarchists, but when you're in the military, which is like, it really fascinates me because it's like, that's like an environment of like extreme nationalism,
Mm-hmm.
And how do you go from that extreme all the way to the other end of, anarchy? It's really amazing. And then to turn around and not only come back to anarchy or come around to anarchy, but then become an active proponent of it and write about it and talk about it. And so I really respect all of you people who have done this. So thank you for your service.
Ah, gosh. That's an interesting phrase maybe we could talk about in a little bit because it's just loaded with...
Well, I meant thank you for your service as coming around to anarchy. No. You misunderstood me.
Well, you have to understand, anytime somebody finds out that you were in the military at some point, they say, thank you for your service.
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah. It's just such a loaded statement for me.
You're right.
I'd like to start a hashtag one day that says thanks, but no thanks, and just write out all the things that I think in my head, but might not say as a response.
Yeah. So that's definitely what I meant. Maybe it was confusing because I started with all that, but no, thank you for now being a proponent for liberty and freedom and free markets and stuff like that.
You're welcome.
The good stuff. Welcome. The good stuff.
You can see I'm still conditioned.
I think most of us are. I mean, I think, so many times I catch myself thinking in statist terms or collectivist terms, and people kind of, snap me out of it. And it's kind of, it's interesting. I think, 12 years of growing up in a public school system or a government school system, better well said, it's hard to break that. It's not easy. Just reading a couple books, you're not going to break that. It's years and years and years. So,
yep,
it's a process. So so please get into your history in the military and and your evolution as an anarchist and how you came to that conclusion.
Sure. I'll try to keep it the relatively short version, but growing up, I was your typical kid, I guess. Never really thought much about politics or philosophy. My family is Republican. We're Mexican-Italian, so Catholicism was a big part of my upbringing as well. But I had never really just had when I was a kid, I was busy playing sports and going to school and, working a high school job and stuff. When it came time to graduate, I was a senior in high school when 9/11 had happened. So obviously, everybody remembers that day. And it was very influential in my thinking. At that point, the Air Force Academy had started recruiting me to play soccer. And then 9/11 happened, and I thought, I want to take part in this. There's a fight coming. I want in on it. We've been... a horrible injustice has occurred, and I want to do what I can to make it right. And Those were basically my two motivating factors for joining the military in the first place. I didn't come from a military family. We didn't really have much experience with it at all, but I thought, this is a great way for me to get an education and do something about this horrible, crime that has just occurred. So, I went off to the academy 8 months later and went through basic training. That was 4 years at school, got a degree, and managed to get a pilot slot, which was also something that I didn't grow up wanting to be. I think like most pilots I know, that's been an end state for a long time. And I went through pilot training. That's a year. And if you have any questions about like any of this, feel free to interrupt me.
No problem.
But throughout, all this time, that 4 years at the academy, 1 year of pilot training, my thoughts never really changed. I guess I would still consider myself Republican, very much a statist. I voted for Bush.
Hey, we all have our sins, I voted for Obama in 2008, so...
Yeah, so I never had put much thought into it. I was just, fed the normal line and bought it just like everybody else. And I was just trying to do the best I could with whatever opportunities I had been given. So went to pilot training, graduated, and I became a pilot for something called Special Operations Command. So in the Air Force, there are different commands. There's the Transport Command, and these are the big airplanes that are flying people and stuff around. And there's Fighter Command, which is where you've got all your small, fast jets that, carry a bunches of bombs and missiles.
The stuff to help people, you mean?
Yeah.
drop food and drop medical supply, right? Okay.
So that would be the Transport Command. The one I was in, Special Operations Command, is where you're going to find your Navy SEALs or your Army Rangers or your Air Force paratroopers, and they're specialized for certain missions, and ideally are only used in certain cases. So my job there was to fly an airplane that had quite a few missions and a lot of top secret stuff that we won't get into. But basically, it was an ISR platform. So ISR stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance, and we had a couple big cameras on the airplane, and our job was to be watching people, watching places, and facilitating, raids and airstrikes. So I did that for a long time, and this is very odd to say, but I loved it. While I was still in this mindset of, America's on the right side, we're doing the right thing. Being in the military is a patriotic, selfless sacrifice. Until I had been exposed to something differently, it was like a great fit. Like I loved flying. Airplanes are fun. You're with wonderful people, and you're running these high stakes missions. I mean, there's a lot of times people ask me, what are you going to miss about the military, or what are you going to miss about flying? And I think for me, it's the intense situation where you have 8 radios going, 50 dudes on the ground, 8 other airplanes in the air with you, and like you're running this. And it's on you, and the stakes are high, and there's a lot of pressure, and it's a very intense situation. And I say all that just because the 180 degrees I've turned was very surprising to me. I think it was surprising to my family and a lot of my friends. If you had told me 5 years ago that one day I would be a conscientious objector advocating for peace and for people to get out of the military, and I would have, Anarcho Mama as my name, I would have laughed at you. I just couldn't have envisioned it.
Who would have built the roads?
Yeah, right? Yeah, I don't think I've ever asked that question. It was just like, this is the society that we live in. This is the way it is. And, I'm a cog in the wheel, and I'm trying to be the best little cog that I can. And I want to do some cool cog stuff. But that's essentially what it was. And so I in that capacity as a special operations pilot, I deployed 8 times, which means I went overseas to other countries 8 times. I was in Afghanistan 5 times, Africa twice, and I went to East Asia once. So for probably the first 6 deployments or so, I was, I'm sure you've heard the phrase fat, dumb, and happy. You're just...
No, never heard that.
Okay, so maybe that's a military thing.
Maybe. So explain.
No, yeah, so this is tough because my entire adult life almost I've been in the military, so stop me if I say something that doesn't make sense. But
okay.
When you're fat, dumb, and happy, it's like the plane's on autopilot, You're just clicking along, like things are just getting done. You're not like thinking critically necessary. You're just doing your job and doing your job as well as you can. So that's what I mean when I say for 6 of my 8 deployments, it was just like, hey, you know, my job's great. You know, my life's good. I'm doing a good job here. I'm progressing. You know, I became an instructor pilot, so that's good. You know, I was getting promoted and getting experience and doing those sorts of things. And it wasn't until Ron Paul's his third attempt to run for the presidency that the first little nutshell started to crack open, and I started considering different points of view. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling a little bit here. I can't really talk about how I left the military without talking about how I also left my faith, because they're very parallel in terms of questioning. So the greatest parallel I can draw is in the military, in a religion, you know, things that can't be explained or that can't be understood by mere mortals are known as faith or mysteries or miracles. And, you know, it's just, hey, there's something else out there. You can't understand it. Just take it at face value or just accept it. And for me, I felt like there were a lot of things in the Catholic faith or Christianity that were like that. It's like, well, how do you explain this? How does it make sense? I don't know. It's faith, you know, just take it on faith. I saw a great parallel between that and what I was doing in the military. I remember on one of my first or second deployments, flying over Afghanistan, you know, we're watching this town that's probably at 15,000 feet or something, these, you know, tiny villages at night. I was thinking, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, by this time, that was 2009. So 9/11 had happened 8 years prior, and we're still there, you know? But I just chalked it up to the same sort of thing. It's like somebody up there has an answer. There's a reason all of this is happening. You're just a very small part of it. Do your part, and trust that there is an overall strategy, or that there is a good reason at the root of this. And I think that's how I justified to myself for 6 deployments worth of flying that, you know, the things I can't understand, or this doesn't make sense to me. Why are we in this country? Or, you know, why are we defending Marines on the ground in Afghanistan? I would reason away by saying, I don't have all the answers. You know, I'm too low on the wheel. Somebody else does. And at some point it became, you know, being in the military is a matter of life and death. Like, the ultimate mission is destroying things and killing people. And I came to the conclusion that, you know, I can't take this on faith. Like, I have to know, I have to see firsthand, or I have to be able to understand and have all the information in front of me to say, like, yes, this is a moral thing to do or a right thing to do. And so all of that questioning kind of started when I read Thomas Paine, who is one of the most influential authors in my life. I read one of his books, The Age of Reason, and he's basically attacking revealed religion and just saying, you know, something has been revealed to you, Danilo, like, okay, maybe it's incumbent upon you to believe it, but Danilo can't come to Jessica and say, hey, Afghanistan's full of bad people. God says we must go attack the country. Basically what Thomas Paine is saying is that revelations are really only incumbent upon that person to believe. And I felt like the same thing in the military. You can't just come to me and say, this is a mission that needs prosecuting, like, go do it. Or, you know, this guy is a bad guy, like, we're going to stage a raid for him tonight. I felt like when it comes to life or death, you can't abrogate that moral responsibility, that decision-making. Like, you have to make that yourself. You can't say, oh, well, somebody told me to do it. Like, somebody else somewhere has the answer and has decided that this village needs to have an airstrike, or that this vehicle, you know, needs to be destroyed, or this person needs to be, you know, killed. And that's really sobering, of course. But for me, those two things were very parallel in terms of how did I consider myself as a person of faith, and if I want to be consistent in my life, and I do, then I had to apply that to how I was living too. It's like, well, if you're not going to stick with the Catholic faith because you're doubting Thomas and you need the proof in front of you, like, why are you doing that in your military job? Like, why are you accepting things that aren't self-evident, basically? So it was kind of a long transition. That took a couple years. And then we got introduced to the Ron Paul movement, and he was the first candidate that was saying things that actually jived with what I had experienced overseas. And he kind of got me on his foreign policy because what he was saying and campaigning on was completely jiving with what I had experienced. By that time, I had deployed quite a few times, and I was already pretty convinced that I'm not doing anything constitutional, and anything I'm doing is not making life better for people at home, and it's certainly not making life better for the people in these countries. And I'm not even sure that this is in defense anymore. So to hear that from a candidate was really eye-opening. He was really the only person saying that. And through Ron Paul, I call him the gateway drug, we were both introduced to just so many other thinkers and writers. And we came across Murray Rothbard and Lou Rockwell and Tom Woods. And it was really a great honor to be on his show. Because, I'd been listening to him for years, and it's like, this guy thinks we're interesting. Cool. So I feel like I'm talking a lot here, so feel free to interrupt me with a question. But
that's all right. Go ahead.
Well, it's really hard to sum up such a profound change in your life that takes place over a couple years that really puts you at odds with the community that you're in, like what you've grown up with. And puts you in this position where, as long as I've been an adult, we've been at war. Mm-hmm. So for somebody to come out and say this is wrong or what we're doing is messed up and you shouldn't be doing it, I think that flies in the face of a lot of, the conventional opinion. Mm-hmm. Especially, we've got such a support the troops sentiment here, which I love all the people I've served with. They're wonderful, wonderful people, but part of me can't separate the fact that, like, we're also engaged in an organization whose ultimate mission is death and destruction. Mm-hmm. Like, paint a pretty picture on it, like that's still what it is at the end. So,
if I may interrupt real quick, two things that came to mind when you were talking was one of them was how the use of euphemisms, in politics as well as in the military, serve to obfuscate the dire nature of what you're doing, or the very serious nature of what you're doing. Like, sure. You said, like, we're going to do a raid, or we're going to do a reconnaissance mission, or we're going to do, surveil the area, or, or neutralize the target. I don't know. These terms, it's amazing how you can say that, and it's almost like it robs the message of what you really want to do. We want to hunt down, these group of people, and, maybe murder whoever gets in our way. And, and it's just amazing. Like, it's the same thing in politics, calling something taxation instead of theft, right? Calling something quantitative easing instead of counterfeiting, right? Sure. There's so many euphemisms that exist that really numb people's minds to what's happening, And the other thing I was going to say is that when you said, we're in perpetual war, it really reminds me of 1984 about like, we've been in war. I mean, what, since when? I don't know, 80s or 90s, or since then, and
at least,
and at least, and it's just like now so nonstop, and people don't even think about it anymore. People just go on with their daily lives, and well, that's reality, but. And it's helpful. I mean, one thing I don't want to do too often when I talk about this kind of stuff is dwell on the dark and the negative, because that's one thing that I get a lot anyway. Is like, you're so negative. You're just looking at the bad things in life. Why don't you focus on the good things? And it's true. There's a lot of good things that are going on, but we can't forget that people are murdering other human beings in the name of government, right? Mm. You can't just look over that.
Sure.
And
No, I think
go ahead.
like
Sorry.
what you're saying too about one, the euphemisms and how you can cover or change the meaning of something. Like the military is probably one of the most efficient organizations at doing that. I mean, we don't call targets targets. We call them HVTs, a high value target. So you're talking about taking out an HVT instead of human.
Right, exactly.
Oh, and even though you're watching this happen through a grainy or a very clear video, as it may be, you know, everything about this situation that has led you to that moment has trained you and prepared you for the fact that, like, this is somebody that just needs to die. Like, you don't. I mean, I'm going to share something that I'm really ashamed of, but I think this will be a good illustration of how efficiently that happens. And let me start with a little backstory. You know, even at the academy, when you're just a little cadet, before you ever go anywhere to fight any wars, you watch all these pump up videos and they're set to that stupid song, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. And it's, so this loud blaring music is playing and you're watching, you know, bombs hit targets and bombs hit buildings. And, you know, everybody in the room around you is just so psyched and amped about it because it's made out to be very, very glorious and like a very good thing. And, you know, you can't help but pick up on the energy around that. And you get that from day one. You really do. You know, the situation I want to tell you about, though, happens many years later, you know, after I've been in maybe a community like this where we talk about people and we don't say the word people or we don't use the word human or we do missions and we take out HVTs or HVIs or whatever it happens to be. But I distinctly remember one mission where we were watching a hit happen. So a hit is when you either have guys, you know, land on the ground and physically raid a place, or you call in an airstrike and bomb a building. And in this instance, it was an HVI, a high value individual who, for whatever reason, had been associated at some point with terrorism in some instance. And that's a really, really blurry, gray extended line that we can talk about. But they're trying to go after this guy. There's like a F-16 on station. They drop a bomb. They like miss the guy. And we're watching this on a camera. And you see like the bomb impact. And then you see a person running away from it. And everybody's like, oh, no, you know, he's a squirter. That's what we call it. You know, if somebody squirts out of the explosion, like they made it. So now we have to chase down the squirters. And I just distinctly remember watching this guy like running and rolling and falling down a hill as like more and more bombs and bombs are following him. And at the time, you know, everybody around me, because we're watching this together, it's like, oh, you know, you got to get him. And it's like this joking, like macabre theater of some sort that didn't really strike me until much later. Looking back at that situation, I was really ashamed of how I felt because all I was thinking about was, you know, they've got to get this guy. They've got to get the guy. They missed. Oh, shit, they better try again. Like, better luck next time. And then when you step out of it and you're like, oh, that's somebody's father. Like, okay, well, maybe he was a really bad guy. But then you think half of the people, you know, everybody in this country, you're going after a bunch of like farmers or teenagers or young people who are just pissed off because you're in their backyard and you're burning their crops and you're raiding their homes and you're shooting their dogs and taking their fathers. Like none of these people were involved with 9/11. Half of them probably think we're the Russians. You know, they don't even realize what's going on. You know, there are some villages out there that are so isolated. They have no clue what 9/11 happened. All they know is that there's a foreign country here that's destroying their livelihoods and they're angry. And a lot of the people we would go after were associated with IEDs, so improvised explosive devices. And these are things where, maybe some of your listeners aren't familiar, but, you know, they can be remotely detonated and, you know, blow up. And they were a really big problem for our troops in Iraq. And the same was in Afghanistan. So Big problem, right? Like our army guys, our Marine guys are vulnerable on the ground to these IEDs. So we go out and we try to hunt down people that are associated with planting them or building them or anything. We call them IED facilitators. So you think about it though, it's like, okay, well that makes sense. IEDs are bad. Anybody messing around with them is not a good person. But when you take a bigger step back, you say, look, an IED really isn't a problem if you're in your own backyard. Like,
right.
why are these army guys stepping on IEDs over here? Like, what are we doing in Afghanistan? And once you start asking those questions and you don't have that faith anymore that that you're there for a good reason, it becomes really difficult to keep doing what you're doing. It's tough.
Yeah. I don't talk to too many people about, I guess, foreign policy, like, the war on terror, because, well, first of all, especially if I'm talking to a veteran, I don't have the credentials to talk to somebody like that, because they're just going to immediately say, you don't know what I've been through. So I just can't even go there. But just talking to everyone else, it's like, I tell people that, these people, let's say these group of hijackers, and I mean, who knows who did it, right? But let's just assume it's like, what is it, 19 Saudi Arabian guys, hijacked planes and hit, various places, and they died. Okay, so now what's gonna happen? Like, so 3,000 people die, and so now going over there for what, like 15 years now, and killing over 1 million people, does that justify,
No.
Does that mean we're equal? Like
Right?
It's like if somebody, were to, or if I were to murder somebody, and then their family were to come and not only kill my whole family, but kill the block, all of my neighbors, the entire block, probably even the entire county, just bomb everybody. And it's just it's collectivist thinking. It's like everybody's to blame, everybody's associated, and it's just to me it's just so indicative of the statist mindset of like everybody is a group. We're all a group. No, there's no individuals. You got the Muslims. You got the Americans, and everyone's a group, and everyone's to blame, and so you can easily justify that. I can see that for people that are in the military.
Well, it's not justice. Like that situation you're describing is not justice.
Yeah.
Like, it was a terrible, terrible crime that 3,000 Americans died on 9/11. Like,
right.
That's a big deal.
Right.
The correct response would be appropriate. And it's like, okay, this is a crime. Like, let's handle it. Like within a justice system, like hunt down the people that are actually responsible and like bring them to trial in a court of justice. And like, you should have plenty of evidence to make your case. The answer is not, let's use this as a pretext for invading 3 countries and, creating regime change in another. And it's just what we're doing is not even related to that anymore. The people that we've been at war with in Afghanistan and Iraq and Africa and all sorts of other places had nothing to do with that. I mean, it's just this monster that's really spiraled out of control.
Yeah, and the other point I'd like to mention is the word defense, right? When you defend something, are you like going across town?
Yeah. Right?
Or are you staying at your own property and defending your property?
Yeah.
That's the definition of defense.
No, actually, I read an article on that called Oxymorons from a Foreign Policy Perspective, and it was just all these words that just get twisted. Defense isn't defense anymore. And that's really, when I came across the non-aggression principle, was like, holy shit, like nothing I've done in my military career thus far, like my entire adult life, that I've been so proud of everything I've done, like hasn't been in defense. Like, holy shit. And there's like one small clarification. We have something called like a tactical view versus a strategic view. Tactical is like, you're looking, it's small, it's what's happening now, what's this particular mission on this day at this time, where strategic is what's the big picture and the overall goal. And I would say that in war, defense happens like in small one-on-one encounters. Like, hey, I'm on one side of the trenches, you're on the other. You run at me with a knife, I'm going to defend myself.
Right, right.
Like there are billions of small instances like that where tactically speaking defense is occurring.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's what I saw. Like I'd be watching a group of army dudes walk through the mountains at night, and if somebody came to attack them, like they'd fight back and we'd help them and we'd facilitate that. But then when you look at it from the strategic overall view, it's like, well, why are your army dudes walking around in the mountains at 18,000 feet, 8,000 miles away from where they are?
Right.
So from a tactical view, it's like, okay, some of this stuff is okay, but strategically, like the big picture, the foundational goal is all wrong. And
yeah, and
we've got a guest.
Oh. Hello.
This is Rebecca. She needs milk.
Rebecca. I don't know if you listen to Prop CJ, Dangerous History Podcast.
No.
Awesome. He's an anarchist historian, and I've been listening to him for a couple months now. And he did one episode last year at Christmas about the Christmas truce of December 1914. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yep.
World War I, and he was basically saying how since then the military has really focused on dehumanizing. First of all, dehumanizing the enemy. It's like making them like not human, right? Just insulting them, demeaning them, belittling them, and then also making the like basically trying to beat out the humanity of human beings and make them into killing machines, right? So that they would follow an order, like it's a lower motor neuron reflex, like it wouldn't even reach the brain, like a knee-jerk response, right? And that was that December 1914 Christmas truce really set into motion that and how he was saying recently the incidence of PTSD has been really ramped up, and not only that, but also the use of machines like helicopters and jets and things like that. So now compared to that time, troops see much more combat they do now than they used to, right, in World War I and even World War II. So, and that's another thing, that's like and it's just amazing how like people, the kind of people that say like that human beings are, naturally evil and nasty and without the government, without laws, they would, just take advantage of you and steal you and assault you and things like that. And you can just see that that's not the case, because you see to what lengths the military has to go to try to beat out the humanity of people and try to make them into killing machines that don't think, right? And that don't question the orders.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, there are always going to be people that are troublemakers or want to do bad things to other people. But by and large, I think the natural state of your average person is peace. And that's one thing I'm grateful for my time in the military is I traveled around the world. And when you do that, you see that people are just like you. Like, their concern is making a good life for their family.
Yeah, and when I make certain posts on Facebook about this kind of stuff, some veterans that are still in the status mindset, they say like, well, the military, it's not only about like violating people's human rights and killing and bombing people, bombing their buildings and their homes. We're also building bridges and roads, and we're helping in their churches, and we're doing all this stuff. So
it's the building roads for you.
Right. So what do you say to somebody that would say that to you?
So there's a great analogy for that, and I can't remember where I picked it up, but there was basically a study done at a nuclear facility, and these researchers went in and they were asking all the employees, hey, what's the worst part about your job? And the answers they got back were, our computer programming stinks, or our processes are all wrong, they're not efficient, or, we don't have enough vacation time, or the HR department stinks. things like that. And not these researchers were appalled that not one person said, hey, maybe the work that I'm doing is contributing towards the demise of humanity. And that really struck a chord with me because, like I said, there are many things on a small basis that are good that we're doing that, at face value you say, yeah, this is a good thing. This is okay. And, but when you step back and, even if your job is handing out towels at the gym, like the organization that you're a part of, is still ultimately engaged in death and destruction. And, they really harp on one team, one fight, unifying everybody towards this one mission. They just, don't really make it clear what the mission is, or they don't put it in, they couch it, they cushion it with nice phrases. And, so that's what I would say is, no matter like what you're doing, like you have to look at what are the ultimate goals of the organization I'm working for. And I'd say people should do that in the private sector as well. But in the military, I mean, it's pretty clear. Your job is to basically go where people tell you and do what other people tell you. And a lot of times that's violence. So.
Yeah. So, and one example that people tell me to prove that not all people in the military are immoral or committing immoral acts is like, well, what about the guy who's the medic who goes out in the field and helps the soldiers? What about the guy who cleans the drones? The guy who just he wipes them down, makes them nice and shiny.
Sure.
Is he an immoral guy? and like you said, you have to step back and see not just what you're doing, but what is the goal of the organization that you work for?
Work towards, yeah. Like, what are you spending 8 hours of your life every day working towards? It's and when you look at it from that point of view, it's quite different.
Right. Like my sister-in-law is she studied accounting, and I could say like even there was people in the Nazi regime that were accountants, right? that managed their money, right? Were they immoral people?
Sure.
Like people can always give this rationalization, I'm just doing my job, but that's really a cop out. It's like, no, use your.
Didn't hold up the Nuremberg trials.
yeah, right. I was just doing my job. So really, you got to step back and use your brain and employ some critical thinking and like, wait a minute, like what am I supporting with my time and my labor?
Yep. No, you're exactly right. It's like, at what point are you not okay being a tool for something else?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I felt like. It's like, I don't want to just be a cog because this wheel is going someplace I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Get off the wheel.
Definitely. So, all right. So, can we discuss a little bit about your "Are You Really Free" series, and just talk a little bit about what you were talking about in that?
Sure. So that's the "Are You Really Free" is part of our Liberty Bug blog, which is something my husband and I started before we got out, even just as a forum to start talking about some of these issues. And one of the things we do is "Are You Really Free?" And we'll go and we look at news articles from around the country that demonstrate, when you put them together, that we say this is the land of the free and the brave, but here you are, you can't put certain things in your body, that are illegal, or you must do this. We try to find a lot of compulsory things. Compulsion is the worst. And it's basically a wrap up of different articles and current events that demonstrate, this may be a wonderful place to live, but is this true freedom? And it's just a tool to get people thinking a little bit more critically. I think that's important because if you can take somebody like me who I feel was somewhat brainwashed and I think I'm fairly intelligent, but I can spend 10 years engaged in military warfare without thinking critically about it. If you can take somebody in that position and get them to where I am now, where it's 180 degrees out, like there's hope for a lot of people to come to this message of non-aggression.
Yeah, it reminds me of Julie Borowski's post on Facebook. She said, she was kind of making fun of the movie Anarchy, the Purge, And
I haven't seen that.
well, good. Don't see it because
Okay.
you can imagine a Hollywood movie with that name. What it would be about? Yes, it's basically about like it's a horror movie, right? And the government
Is this the one where like one night a year people
right.
can do whatever they? Okay, that
Yeah,
sounded terrible.
yeah. They shut down like the government. All laws are suspended for like I don't know 24 hours or something, and of course gangs pop up. Everyone's raping and murdering each other and assaulting and everything, and just chaos and bloodshed and all that. And statist dream, or the conception of what happened with our government. And so Julie Borowski, she posted on Facebook, if all laws were suspended for let's say 12 hours, what would you do?
I would clearly become like a and murder people.
And it's so funny. The comments at the top that got the most likes were like open a lemonade stand, drink raw milk,
Oh, that's funny.
what was the other one? Make additions to my house, go fishing.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
You
It's true though.
it's like what kind of evil sadistic human beings you think people are that they need scribbles written by politicians on Capitol Hill to keep them in line and civil and decent with one another.
Yeah, it's really kind of a cynical concept. Like, I know you said you get accused of being on the dark side and stuff, but really, like, what's the more cynical position that like people need boundaries for them to treat each other well? Like, some people might I think there will always be some people that are, have bad intentions, but it's really a sad view of humanity if the state is required.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is that I think it's helpful to point out to people, especially when we talk about foreign policy, is that we, as peaceful human beings, have more in common with the average Iraqi, Afghanistan, Afghani, and Iranian than we do with our own political masters here in the United States. And it's so important for people to realize that because, too often we can get so divided by such, absurd things like religion, like nationality, gender, creed, ethnicity, all these kind of reasons to divide people, when in fact you have to realize that we all have, most people have basically the same aspirations. You want to, settle down, meet somebody that you fall in love with, earn enough money to support your family, have kids, give them a good education, you want them to have a good life, and basic stuff like that. That's basically what most people want all over the world.
Most people around the world want.
And it's amazing how statism is founded in fear of the unknown, right? Fear of your neighbor, fear of that country, that strange religion, fear of everybody. That's the only way they stay in power is by propagating this fear.
No, I think you'd see that a lot in like the current campaigning. It's a boogeyman.
Yeah. Like with the wall and Trump's wall. It's like you can draw parallels to the Berlin Wall. To there was like a wall that was put up in Nazi Germany. Like it's just so many ways to divide people, and it's just amazing how. Say again?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. There definitely are, and that's what the state capitalizes on.
Yeah, fear, and when you begin to understand that people, we all are basically the same, have similar aspirations. We're not all that different, It's like especially now with the internet, you can go onto Facebook, friend request somebody in Iraq or Afghanistan, or Skype with them and talk with them and say, do you want to come here and like blow up buildings? Like, no. Why do you ask? I don't know, because I was watching my TV and that's what they said you want to do.
No, there's a great quote I came across that said, travel is the fastest way to peace. And I loved that because it's just when you meet people from other places, that's when you actually realize that. And that's when that lesson becomes clear is, when you see how other people are living and all they want to do is provide for their families and, have a nice little life, they're not interested in engaging in any of this crime, they're just the same as you are.
Yeah.
That realization is truly maybe one of the fastest ways to peace, like the quote says.
Yeah. I mean, I've done a fair amount of traveling, and my grandparents recently went to Russia for the first time,
Oh, cool.
and the first thing they said that I remember they came back and they said, it's amazing to go there because especially during the Cold War, we were taught to hate these people.
Sure.
And and you're right. It's just amazing how, yes, statism thrives on just erecting these walls, these barriers, and
Sure.
and just love and compassion and kindness can just, I think, break through all of that. And I think that's what we have to realize. That's what we have to demonstrate to people what voluntarism and anarchy is about, right? Because so much, especially the word anarchy, has such negative connotations. And so, you really have to say, I tell them that, this is a philosophy about love, about compassion,
Sure.
about advocating. We're not just anti-state, anti-government, anti-laws, but we're pro-freedom and pro-love,
Yeah. Consensual relationships. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and it's amazing, when you put it in that way, like, who can be against consensual relationships, right? What kind of person?
It's I mean, like, once you come across it, like, I haven't found any compelling arguments to come take me away from non-aggression, as kind of my founding principle. And then, the logical follow on is, well, everybody should have this. And, that's really all an anarchist society is to me, a place where self-sovereignty is recognized and, non-aggression is recognized.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. It's like really simple. And when you put it in terms like that, like,
yeah,
hey, you shouldn't be coerced into anything. You shouldn't be compelled to act against your will. Like,
right.
I think a lot of people can get behind that.
All right. Okay, so before we go, can you talk about your approach to peaceful parenting as demonstrated with your little one?
Well, so the non-aggression principle changed my life professionally, obviously with leaving the military, and then personally, it's I strive for consistency in my life. So I want to treat my daughters like their bodies are their own and teach them autonomy. And I don't want to teach them that might makes right, like we as a nation tend to do. Mm-hmm. So for me, it kind of just made sense. It's a logical follow on from my overall philosophy that, I mean, it's a struggle, though.
No, it is.
There are times I have a toddler, and I know you've been through this phase before, but it's like, I just need you to obey. Like, just be obedient, please, and do what I'm telling you to do, because just do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I joke that it's like negotiating with terrorists. So it's, I think the peaceful parenting has been one of the most humbling and most challenging experiences I've had when you really want to live out this thing, like put your money where your mouth is. And it's like, we're not going to do things that are, that don't make sense. My job as a parent is to shepherd these young women and to demonstrate to them how.
All right, so we had some technical difficulties, but we're back online. So before we go, please plug some of your information if people want to reach you and check out your podcast.
All right, so like Danilo mentioned earlier, our website is called libertybug.org. We've got a Facebook page under that name as well. That's a great way to reach my husband and I. I'm on Twitter as Anarcho Mama. That's MAMA. And we're especially interested in talking to people. Oh, got a crying baby. But we're especially interested in talking to anybody who might be curious about voluntarism or anarchism or the military, because it is quite a different environment to come from, and we've spent 20 years combined in it. So we're more than happy to reach out and help kind of share our experience or the resources that helped us make some important decisions.
Yes.
So you
Awesome.
have-
Definitely. So let's get it. Let's let her get back to peaceful parenting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Is that-
Awesome to
All right.
see an infant on my show. I have two kids.
Thanks so much,
I have
Danilo.
a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, so I love kids.
Yeah, this is going quickly, but it only serves to heighten the importance of what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the best way to eradicate statism is by raising, loving, peaceful, gentle, compassionate
Yep.
human beings. You can try to convince somebody and deprogram them, decondition them, but that's very, very difficult compared to raising people the right way.
Yep.
So they're not broken adults, right?
I absolutely agree. It's the most important job.
Oh my God, it's so undervalued. It really is.
Yes.
So awesome conversation, Jessica. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Danilo.
So if anybody wants to help me out, you can do so through PayPal, Bitcoin, or Patreon. That's patreon.com/peaceful anarchism to help me out and help me out interviewing wonderful people like Jessica here, spread the message of voluntarism in their own way. So thank you very much for that. And so we'll say goodbye. This is Peaceful Anarchism on the Voluntary Virtues Network and theseedsofliberty.com and theconsciousresistance.com. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.